People smuggling gangs are hoping to cash in on Europe's migration crisis by slashing the price of channel crossings to Britain. Traffickers are reportedly offering places on small boats for as little as £500 after the unprecedented surge of around 60,000 migrants into the Spanish enclave of Ceuta this week. Prime Minister Andy Burnham has offered his support to Spain as it deals with the surge. Have a listen.
I mean, obviously, that's a matter for the Spanish government first and foremost, but it is a cause for...
Well, there you go. This is GB News Originals. I'm Emily Carver. Please do give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. And do leave a comment. Let me know what you think.
And we are making contact with the Spanish government, the Spanish authorities, to provide support, but also to understand the implications of that situation.
But as countries across Europe grapple with rising arrivals, could Britain's borders be next in the spotlight? Well, let's talk now to Reform UK Party Chairman Lee Anderson. Lee, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Lee, a frightening story today. I mean, as if the Spanish invasion, because let's not beat about the bush, that's what it was, wasn't frightening enough. Now we learn that people smugglers are boasting this is a big opportunity and they're offering cut-price deals for people to come into the UK. Reaction, please.
Well, it comes as no surprise, Dawn. I mean, Andy Burnham's in no position to give anybody, especially Spain, any advice on securing borders. I think over 2,000 illegal migrants have arrived in this country since he walked into number 10. And look, this has been happening now for the best part of 5 or 6 years. I was banging on about this 5 years ago. I visited the camps in Calais. It was quite apparent at the time, and it still is, that these aren't people fleeing persecution or fleeing wars. They're economic migrants. 200,000 have arrived on our shores. Probably about 80 to 90% of those actually get accepted and get their asylum claims accepted. The rest just disappear into the black economy. And the Labour government and the cabinet keep bleating on about how many deportations there have been, but they fail to mention that most of these are voluntary. People have been paid to go back, and a lot of them are just overstayers, students and work visas and the like. There's only one way you're going to stop this, and that is to detain and deport every single illegal migrant that comes onto these shores, and I don't know why the main parties don't agree with this policy.
Lee, I mean, when you have countries like Italy, which, all right, OK, is to the right, but Denmark, which is not renowned for being a right-wing government, strengthening their borders and taking a firm stand against this. Yeah. Why in this country do we have the cabinet members, I mean, I interviewed Louise Hay the other day, even scared of using the word invasion? She said, oh, it's not an invasion. Until we face facts, are we...
Oh, indeed. And why you've got cabinet members using that not using that sort of language, should I say? Well, we'll never be able to fix the problem. You speak about Italy. I was in Italy last weekend, actually, and in a city called Florence, and I saw firsthand the impact of illegal migrants. Hundreds of North African young males loitering, hanging around on street corners, intimidating people, scaring people, nowhere to sleep, you know, urinating and defecating in the street. Truly terrifying. And this is happening all over Europe. And it's because governments like ours are completely weak and spineless. This can be sorted out with the stroke of a pen. Detain and deport and leave the ECHR. It's as simple as that.
And Lee, why do not just this government, but the previous government, it has to be said, it's not unique to one party. Why do the governments that we've had recently not listen to people and listen to people's genuine fears, especially women and girls? And if you dare to speak out, they tell you you're racist. Why don't they listen to ordinary people?
You're quite right, Dawn. They don't listen. The only time they do listen is when they want to open a hotel or a camp in their own constituencies, and then they're kicking off saying things like, it's not suitable, it's not a suitable area. These people in Parliament, the place where I visit, you know, every week, have not got a clue what real people think. All they're interested in is keeping their seats. But like I said, Dawn, when it impacts their own area, then they're pretty quick to speak out. Look, we've seen the crime rates in this country rocket. We've seen the problems with illegal migration. We've seen the problems with HMOs on our streets now. Yes, the hotels are empty, but where are these young men going? They're going onto our streets, and it's terrifying for young families, especially those who've got children and daughters, when you see gangs of young men who come from cultures, backward cultures, I'm not ashamed to say that have no respect for our women and girls. It's truly terrifying, and our governments, successive governments, should really hang their heads in shame. They've made us unsafer.
And it's not racist to be worried about the cultural differences between many of the countries that these young men, many, are coming from.
It's not racist to point out the fact that, men from places like Sudan, Eritrea and Afghanistan, some of them are a threat to our young women and girls. We see it almost on a weekly basis now, another Afghani or a Sudanese or wherever in court for raping and harming young girls in our country. It's not racist to keep highlighting the fact the people that should be ashamed are the people in power.
And the other point in the story today is what's happened in Spain with this invasion is that gangs operating along the frontier between Iran and Afghanistan are now saying that inquiries from those countries have climbed sharply about tickets, if that's the right phrase, about boat traffic over to the UK. They say, well, they've seen this as an encouraging sign. They now want to give it a try, and it's only £500. Why not?
Oh, I mean, it is encouraging. They might as well just open the travel agents on the high street in mainland Europe, these people smugglers, and put 2 flights a day on from northern France. That's how simple it is now, Dawn, to get people across this country because, as I say, there are no deterrents for anybody entering our country illegally. If they thought that once they got here, they would be detained and would be deported and never allowed to claim asylum, then they wouldn't come. It's as simple as that.
And as Zia Youssef, who's been out in theatre, said that he spoke to one person that admitted he was wanted for murder in his home country. We don't know who these people are or what intentions they have towards us.
Well, exactly. We've got murderers, rapists, paedophiles, sexual offenders coming in by the boatload on almost a daily basis. And what happens when they get here? We put them in a nice, cushy hotel, free phones, access to Wi-Fi, 3 meals a day, and say, you poor soul, we're going to find somewhere for you to live, give you free legal aid, and then they stop in this country for the rest of their life. Some of them go and commit awful crimes. And again, Dawn, this is all because we have weak leadership in this country.
And just quickly and finally, Lee, do you ever, I mean, Labour keep telling us that the boat crossings are down. Do you ever see a time where the United Kingdom might face a situation similar to what we have seen in Thea?
The tables have turned. Why Kemi Badenoch just became the bookies' favourite to be Britain's next Prime Minister. Something has shifted in British politics, and if you haven't been paying close attention, you have almost certainly missed it. For months, the story was simple. Nigel Farage was the man of the moment, the inevitable disruptor, the one everyone assumed was destined to walk through the door of number 10. That was the narrative. That was the consensus. And now, quietly, without a single dramatic press conference, that consensus has cracked. Before we get into exactly what's happened and why it matters more than you might think, welcome to Britain Underneath, the channel that looks past the headlines and tells you what's actually going on beneath the surface of British politics. If this is your first time here, do yourself a favour and hit that subscribe button right now, because what we're about to unpack is the kind of story the mainstream commentary has barely scratched. All right. Let's dive in. For the best part of a year, the political betting markets told one story on repeat. Farage was surging. Reform UK was the party to watch. The Conservatives, under Kemi Badenoch, were treated as an afterthought, a party still trying to work out what it stood for after a bruising general election defeat. Every poll, every pundit, every late-night panel show seemed to agree on one thing. If anyone was going to take the keys to Downing Street next, it was going to be Farage. But politics, as we know all too well on this channel, has a habit of humbling the people who think they've already worked it out. Leading bookmakers have now flipped the script entirely. Kemi Badenoch has overtaken Nigel Farage to become the new favourite to be the United Kingdom's next Prime Minister. That is not a small shift. That is not noise in the data. That is a genuine change in where the smart money, the people who put their own cash behind their predictions, believe this is heading. Before we go further, if you're finding this useful, this is exactly the moment to hit subscribe. Britain Underneath exists to give you this kind of clarity every single week, and we can only keep doing it with your support. So go on, tap that button. It takes 2 seconds. Let's talk numbers, because the numbers tell a story all on their own. William Hill is now pricing Kemi Badenoch at 3-1 to become the next Prime Minister. Just days ago, she was sitting at 5-1. That is a rapid, meaningful tightening of the odds, the kind of movement that only happens when serious money starts flowing in one direction. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage, who was once the clear market leader at 9-4, has drifted out to 7-2. In betting terms, that is not a minor wobble. That is a genuine changing of the guard. And here's where it gets even more interesting. It isn't just about who becomes Prime Minister. It's about who's even still standing at the top of their own party by the time the next election rolls around. Kemi Badenoch is currently priced at 2-7 to still be leading the Conservatives when that election arrives. Nigel Farage, by contrast, sits at 4-6 to still be in charge of Reform UK. Now, compare that to where Farage stood roughly a year ago, when he was as short as 1-20 to still be leading his party. That's an extraordinary collapse in confidence. The man who once looked untouchable is now facing genuine odds, 6-4, that he could be replaced as Reform leader before the next election even happens. Take a breath there for a second, because that number alone deserves to sit with you. A year ago, almost nobody would have taken that bet seriously. Today, it's a live conversation. One senior figure at William Hill summed it up plainly, explaining that Badenoch has moved clear at the head of the next Prime Minister market, and that at 3-1, she is now viewed as more likely to walk into Downing Street than Nigel Farage. He pointed out that while the Conservatives and Reform remain closely matched when it comes to predictions on seats, it is Badenoch's stronger odds to survive as leader through to the next election that suggest bettors have more long-term faith in her staying power than they do in his. Kemi Badenoch has signalled she's willing to sit down with Prime Minister Andy Burnham to work together on fixing Britain's social care crisis. That's a notable move in itself. Cross-party cooperation is not exactly the default setting of British politics these days. But she isn't offering that hand without conditions. She has written directly to the Prime Minister, challenging him to rule out tax rises or increased borrowing as the means of funding any social care reform. In other words, she's saying, I'll work with you, but not if it means hitting people's pockets harder to pay for it.
And good morning.
If you're enjoying this deep dive, remember, Britain Underneath is where you come for the full picture, not the soundbite. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss where this story goes next. Here's some important context on why social care has become such a defining battleground. Back when Sir Keir Starmer was still leading the government, a commission into social care was launched in January of last year, chaired by Baroness Casey, and it formally got underway a few months later. The first report from that commission, focused on short-term fixes, is expected to land this autumn. But the real substance, the long-term structural recommendations, isn't due until 2028. That is a long runway for a crisis that millions of families are living through right now. And Baroness Casey herself hasn't been shy about how deep this problem runs. When she appeared in front of the Health and Social Care Committee, she was asked whether she could speed up the process if the new Prime Minister wanted her to. Her answer was short and direct. Yes. That single word carries a lot of weight when you consider what she said next, that Britain has made no fewer than 22 separate attempts at reforming social care since 1997, and not one of them, in her words, actually fixed the foundations. 22 attempts. Think about that. Nearly 3 decades of governments promising to sort this out, and by her own assessment, none of them actually did. So here's where we land. On one side, you have a betting market that has swung decisively in Kemi Badenoch's favour, a sign that confidence in her position and doubt in Farage's staying power is growing by the week. On the other, you have a genuine, substantive policy fight brewing over how Britain finally gets serious about fixing social care, a problem so entrenched that 22 previous attempts couldn't crack it. Both of these threads are still very much unfolding, and if there's one thing we know about British politics, it's that the story never stays still for long. Stay informed, because the moment this shifts again, and it will, you'll want to already understand exactly how we got here. That's it for today's deep dive here on Britain Underneath. If you found this valuable, please do us a favour and hit subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel keep bringing you the analysis you won't find anywhere else. We've got more stories like this coming, the kind that go beneath the headlines and into what's actually shaping the country. So stick around, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.